Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai's Linux News. Let's kick things off with a story that every Linux user needs to hear about right now. As reported by its FOSS, there's a brand new Linux exploit in the wild called Dirty Frag, and it's a serious one. This vulnerability can grant an attacker full root access to a system. And here's the part that should really get your attention. There is no proper patch available yet. A working exploit is already circulating publicly, which means bad actors don't have to do much heavy lifting to take advantage of this. What makes it even more alarming is that systems which already patched the previously known copy fail vulnerability are still exposed. These are two separate attack surfaces. So even if you've been keeping up with your security updates, you may not be safe from Dirty Frag. Its FOSS is recommending that administrators and users keep a very close eye on upstream kernel security announcements and apply any mitigation patches the moment they become available. This is exactly the kind of zero-day situation that keeps sysadmins up at night. A working exploit, root access on the table, and the fix isn't here yet. We'll be watching this one closely, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any updates. Now, speaking of security, and this ties in perfectly with our last story, its FOSS is reporting on a really fascinating new proposal for the Linux kernel, an AI-assisted kill switch. So what exactly is this? Essentially, it's a proposed patch that would give system administrators the ability to disable specific vulnerable kernel functions on the fly without needing to wait for a full, proper fix to be developed and shipped. Think of it like a circuit breaker. If a dangerous bug is found in a particular kernel function, admins could just switch that function off temporarily to protect their systems until the real patch arrives. The AI-assisted part is particularly interesting. The tooling would help identify which functions are at risk and guide the kill switch targeting. Now, this is still a proposal, so it hasn't landed in the mainline kernel yet, but the timing couldn't be more relevant given what we just talked about with Dirty Frag. If a mechanism like this had already existed, administrators might have had more options to protect themselves right now. It's a really forward-thinking approach to the age-old problem of the gap between vulnerability discovery and patch availability. We'll be keeping an eye on whether this makes it into the kernel. All right, let's shift from security to the latest in kernel development. According to Fornix, Linus Torvalds has dropped Linux 7.1 RC3, the third weekly release candidate for the upcoming 7.1 kernel. And this one is notable. Roughly a third of all the patches in this release candidate are targeted at the networking subsystem. That's a significant concentration of work in one area, signaling that the networking stack is getting some serious attention this cycle. Also baked into this RC3 is the enabling of auto counter reload, or ACR, for Intel's upcoming Xeon Diamond Rapids processors. That's a performance monitoring feature that's also being backported to existing stable kernels, which is great news for enterprise users already running those platforms. As always with release candidates, this is testing territory, not something you'd want to throw onto a production machine, but it's a good indicator of what's coming when 7.1 hits stable. The sheer volume of networking changes makes this a particularly interesting release candidate for anyone running Linux in high-throughput network environments. Fornix has the full breakdown if you want to dive into the specifics. Now here's a story that made me do a double take. Fornix is reporting that Jens Axbo, the lead developer behind IO_Uring and the Linux block layer maintainer, has been cooking up some new kernel patches that achieve a jaw-dropping 60% increase in per-core I/O performance. 60%. That is not a typo. The backstory here is that at last week's Linux Storage, File System, Memory Management, and BPF Summit held in Croatia, a presentation compared Linux I/O overhead against the Storage Performance Development Kit, known as SBDK. That comparison apparently motivated Axbo to get to work, and the results have been remarkable. These patches are still in development, but the numbers being reported are the kind that make enterprise storage engineers very, very happy. IO_Uring is already one of the most impactful additions to the Linux kernel in recent years for high-performance I/O workloads, and if these improvements land, it could dramatically close the gap between Linux's native I/O stack and more specialized solutions like SBDK. For anyone running databases, high-frequency storage workloads, or just wanting faster disk performance on Linux, keep your eyes on this one. It looks like Ubuntu isn't the only Linux distribution jumping on the AI developer desktop trend. As covered by its FOSS, Fedora is now rolling out its own dedicated AI developer desktop initiative. The plan spans 3 new Fedora releases and is targeting a wide range of hardware. Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, and ARM platforms are all in scope. This is a pretty broad net, and it signals that Fedora wants to be the go-to distribution for developers building and running AI workloads locally. Now, whether you're excited or skeptical about the AI wave hitting Linux desktops, this is clearly a direction the major distributions are committing to. Ubuntu laid the groundwork with their own AI-focused offering, and now Fedora is following suit with what sounds like an even more hardware-diverse approach. For developers who are already in the Fedora ecosystem and want to do local AI development without fighting their OS to get the right tools and drivers set up, this could be genuinely useful. Its FOSS has more details on the phased rollout across those 3 releases, so check the link in the description if you want the full picture. Great news for fans of tiling window managers. Fornix reports that Hyprland 0.55 has officially dropped, and it's a big feature release for this popular Wayland-based compositor. The headline edition is Lua-based configuration. That's right. Instead of Hyprland's existing config format, you can now use Lua scripting to configure your setup, which opens the door to significantly more dynamic and programmable configurations. For power users who love tweaking every aspect of their desktop environment, this is a huge quality-of-life upgrade. The other major feature is user-defined custom layouts, giving you even more control over how windows are arranged on your screen. Hyprland has built a strong following in the Linux rising and customization community, and releases like this show exactly why. If you're someone who lives and breathes terminal workflows and loves a beautifully tiled desktop, version 0.55 is definitely worth checking out. Head to the Fornix article linked in the description for the full list of changes. And finally, let's end on some genuinely good news for the Linux hardware ecosystem. Its FOSS is giving a well-deserved shout-out to Dell and Lenovo, who have stepped up as premier sponsors of LVFS, the Linux vendor firmware service. If you're not familiar, LVFS is the backend infrastructure that allows firmware updates to be delivered directly to Linux devices across millions of machines. It's the reason you can update your laptop's BIOS and firmware right from GNOME software or Floppinger without ever touching Windows. Having 2 of the world's largest PC manufacturers formally funding this service is a really significant vote of confidence. It means the project has more resources, more stability, and hopefully more vendor participation going forward. Its FOSS is right to highlight this. It's the kind of infrastructure support that doesn't always make headlines, but makes a real difference to everyday Linux users. Here's hoping other hardware vendors take note and follow Dell and Lenovo's lead. Alright everyone, that's a wrap on this week's Genai Linux news. There is a ton happening in the Linux world, and I'm here every week to break it all down for you. If you found this useful, drop a like on the video. It really does help the channel grow. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay open source, and I'll see you in the next one.